Hi there, my friend, and welcome to this video. If you're here, perhaps something in your creative life feels heavy. You may be experiencing some creative blocks. Maybe you've been feeling stuck, disconnected from your inspiration, and unsure of how to even return to your creative practice. This message is for you, for the artist who feels stuck. Because creative block is not the end of your creativity. In fact, periods of inactivity are part of the process. It's part of the natural cycle that goes from inspiration, gathering, gestation, creation, refinement, completion, reflection, rest, and renewal. I'll get more into these 9 phases of the natural creative cycle as we get into the video. But before anything else, I want to assure you that your creativity hasn't left you and you're not broken. There's nothing that needs fixing. In this video, I'll be sharing some practices and strategies on how to unblock and return to your creative flow, regardless of what type of creative practice that you engage in. So let's get to it. Understanding creative contraction. So I want you to understand that the creative flow does not disappear. It contracts, it hibernates, it gestates, it waits, it absorbs, and it digests and recharges. So in that sense, sometimes when we're feeling stuck, it's not because of lack of inspiration. It's because we're holding on too tight to expectation and we make ourselves feel overwhelmed. At least that can be one cause. We want the creative product that we're creating to be good. We want the idea that we've had to work. We want progress, and we want to assure ourselves that we're still an artist. And in that pressure, the flow becomes rigid. Creativity is not a machine. It's not mechanical. It's more of a relationship with the divine and with our higher selves. And just like any relationship, when there's too much control, when it's too rigid, it withdraws. Let's explore for a moment, why do people get creatively blocked? Creative blocks almost never comes from the lack of talent. They come from emotional, mental, and subconscious barriers. The most common causes include fear of judgment. There can be fears that others will criticize, reject, misunderstand, or even laugh at your work. Perfectionism. It's the feeling that what we are creating must be good, successful, and worthy from the first attempt. Of course, like any skill, you build over time. Inner critic conditioning. These are voices from childhood, teachers, parents, former partners, from the workplace or society that said, you're not good enough, this is not practical, or you shouldn't be wasting your time with this. And these voices can become internalized, especially if it occurred during childhood. Creativity trauma. Moments where your creativity was dismissed, mocked, stolen, or punished. Even small comments can lodge deeply in our psyche. Once again, the younger we were, the more internalized these voices can be in our personality. Over-responsibility. This one is very common in adults. Being a caretaker, the problem solver, the one who keeps things together, and then leaving no mental space for play, for imagination, or self-expression. Burnout and overstimulation. We live in a world of constant inputs, social media, work demands, family. Maybe you live in the city with the bustling energy and noise. And all of this can overwhelm our nervous system. leaving no spaciousness for originality and for play. Loss of connection to playfulness. Creativity requires curiosity, experimentation, and a childlike wonder. And often as adults, we lose this in the rigid structures of life. Spiritual disconnection. Many people feel creatively blocked when they're disconnected from their intuition, their inspiration, and their inner creative voice. So let's figure out how to get it back. Another matter to consider is that there is a natural flow to the creative cycle, and it goes something like this. Number 1 is inspiration, that's igniting the spark. Number 2 is the gathering phase, that's absorbing inspiration and inputs. Number 3 is gestation, that's the incubation time of your ideas that you've gathered. Number 4 is the flow of productive output. That's the actual creating phase. This is the phase where a lot of artists want to stay all of the time, but it's not natural for us to do so. Next step, number 5, is refinement. That's the editing and adjusting. That's when we're really putting in our craft. Number 6 is completion. That's the release of the work, of letting it go, making it public. Number 7 is reflection. That's when we take the time to grow and reflect on what we've learned, and those lessons consolidate within us. Number 8 is the rest, where we're hibernating in emptiness, the ideas subside. And number 9 is renewal. It's the stir of reorientation before we repeat the cycle once again. So creative blocks usually appear during the transition between the release and the rest, or from the rest into the renewal period, or when we try to force creation during gestation and incubation periods. So what feels like being stuck is often just being in the wrong phase compared to the expectations we are placing on ourselves. So understand that creativity is seasonal. Spring is the inspiration phase, summer is the creation, autumn, refinement and release, and winter is rest, digestion, and transformation. As we always transform, we always grow and expand with each piece of art that we create, regardless of what type of creative activity you engage in, whether it's music or art or writing or dancing, anything this applies to. Then how do we return? So when we are stuck, how do we return to this process of natural creative flow? Well, one thing that can be helpful is to determine which of the 9 phases of the creative cycle that you're in at the moment, and then allowing yourself to experience and go through that before forcing into another phase. Another thing you can do is soften. Instead of asking, what should I create? Perhaps instead ask, what wants to move through me? Because there is a subtle difference there. Creative block often appears when we create only from the mind, but flow can return when we allow the body and the intuition and the subconscious to participate in the process. Returning to playfulness. One way that I find personally to be very helpful if I'm feeling a little stuck and I want to help move from one phase into the next is simply returning to playfulness. If you're a painter, maybe you want to doodle, maybe you want to make a painting just for yourself. You can draw symbols without any kind of planning. You can move colors across the canvas without the need for it to become something. If you play an instrument or you're a writer, you can start by allowing yourself to simply improvise, to follow the flow and simply see what comes out. And of course, you can adapt this principle of simplicity and returning to playfulness within whatever creative activity that you engage in. Playfulness is the key here. When we were children, we did not create to impress anyone. We created because it felt alive. Accessing our imagination just felt natural and inviting. The moment creativity becomes only about the outcome, it loses its magic, its natural flow. The stuck phase as inner alchemy. And yet the stuck phase is not the enemy. Often it's a threshold, a moment of inner alchemy, of letting go of what needs to be purged and transmuting the old, making way for the new. Perhaps your old way of creating is dissolving or expanding. Perhaps your identity as an artist is shifting. Perhaps growth and lessons from previous work is being digested and internalized. So that way, creative stillness can simply be incubation and reflection. But of course, the key is to not get stuck long-term in any of these phases. A gentle practice to return to flow. I invite you to work with symbolism, ritual, and intention in your creative process. Instead of pushing through outward, turn inwards. You can light a candle, for example, and set an intention for your creative process. You can sit in silence before you create and just listen within to your higher self and see what inspiration, what your intuition brings you. Another super effectful thing to do is to breathe consciously. And if you're really feeling you're lacking motivation and determination, I recommend to do breathwork and yoga. This can really help to move the energies in your body. The absolute best thing that you can do for yourself in your creative practice is to specifically set time aside for your creative practice. For example, if you play an instrument, maybe you commit to doing 30 minutes practice every day. If you're a painter or you like to draw, maybe you draw every day for 30 minutes to perfect your skill. And along the way, when things come to mind that you think are causing this creative block that you are finding yourself in, then journal about it. Journaling definitely is a very helpful process to help us declutter the mind so that the creative flow can flow more freely. Another powerful practice that you can do is work with affirmations. You could, for example, say to yourself on a daily basis, every morning, maybe you repeat it 3 times, I allow my creativity to move freely through me. I create without pressure. I trust the process. Now, there's also a key there. Always remember to enjoy the journey. Equally, it's very helpful to also make a list every evening of what you want to be working on the day after. As you create these lists of your intention, your plans, what you would like to do and create, you can also use these to help keep track and see your progress. Because sometimes we also forget. We forget what we created. We forget how productive we were just a few days ago when we're in this period of creative block. So keeping those lists and seeing that you've crossed out many, many tasks can be helpful in assuring yourself that you're not standing still, that progress has been made. Allowing the flow. So creative flow is not something we chase or force. It's something that we allow. And sometimes the most transformative art emerges after periods of doubt and periods of stillness and inactivity. So if you're feeling stuck right now, consider this. Maybe you're not blocked. Maybe you're gestating, hibernating, or reviving. So be patient with yourself. Be gentle with your process. And above all, return to joy and playfulness, even in some small ways. Allow yourself to be imperfect, allow yourself to be playful, and allow yourself to create something that no one will ever see. Allow yourself to create just for you. This is often where the flow begins again, when you allow yourself to engage in the creative process without any expectation, focusing on the value of the process instead. So if you are in a period right now of creative block, pause for a moment and take a breath. And although creative block can feel like abandonment, like something sacred has gone silent, like the current that once moved through you has left you or dried up, notice that what felt like absence was simply a quiet preparation for something deeper. So you're not empty, you're in a transition, and your creativity is patiently waiting for you to meet it there. If you are looking for deeper support in moving through your creative blocks, I'm currently working on a video series documenting my process of going through the 12-step program of this book called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. I'll be sharing weekly reflections and insights from going through this process myself, and feel free to join me along the journey. In fact, I invite you to follow along and do the 12-week process with me. So if you'd like to walk this path alongside me, you're very welcome to subscribe and follow the series. That's the end of this video. I appreciate you being here and wishing you all a joyful, creative journey of inner alchemy.